Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another of my Meet the Candidate events. We've had a fantastic selection of guests so far. We've had the sitting MSP for Falkirk East, Angus MacDonald, the Minister for Trade, Investment and Public Finance, Ivan McKee, the candidate for South Perthshire and Kinrossshire, Jim Fairley, last week. And today we have Roza Salih, the #1 SNP list candidate for Glasgow. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to catching up with you. And first of all, of course, I need to say Nowruz Mubarak to you because it's a special day of celebration for you, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Today is our kind of new spring and new year for the Kurdish people, and many other ethnic minorities celebrate Nowruz in the Middle East.
Oh, yeah. And so I take it you're going to be celebrating with your family today, are you?
Well, I hope so, yes. Yeah, we were basically, unfortunately, because of lockdown, we're not able to see other families.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we just, as a family, we wear traditional clothing and celebrate Nowruz.
Yeah. And do you have like special food, and do you dance? Do you
Yeah.
sing?
Yes, my mom makes dolma. It's a traditional food, and of course meat. We have chicken and meat, and there's a feast of that. We also dance, so we might do that as a family.
Oh, fantastic. Sounds well, hopefully next year I can come along to one of the events and join in. I don't think I'd be very good at the dancing, but I'm certainly happy to try all the food and
Definitely.
dressing up. So I suppose, I think for everyone listening today, you've got a very interesting background, and it would be useful for everyone to understand what that background is. Can you tell us a little bit more about you?
Yes, so I was born in Kurdistan and I grew up in Scotland. I came to Scotland as an asylum seeker, and that was 20 years ago. I was seeking refugee status, and really when I was 15 years old, I was attending Drumchapel High School, and like any other children really, and the next thing was the immigration official downgraded one of my friends home and detained her to be deported back to Kosovo. And really, from there, our campaign of the Glasgow Girls started. And the campaign was so successful, we ended child detention in the UK. And we also raised the profile of the needs of asylum seekers. At the time, there was not many asylum seekers in Glasgow. So really, the Glasgow Girls was so powerful because we spoke for so many people where they had no voice. And really, we were a bunch of lassies in Drumchapel High, and we the politician were looking over to us. There was a lot of attention for our campaign at the time in 2005, and really journalists were interested in our story, and they actually called us the Glasgow Girls. It was 7 of us campaigning. So really, our campaign was became so big that we won the Year Politician Year Award in 2005. At the time, Jack McConnell was the first minister, and really we challenged him heavily, stating why asylum seekers are being detained, asylum seeker children especially. And I was the one that actually requested for an amnesty for people who have been in this country, who have integrated and they went to school and studied here. And I think that was offered after a while, after 5 years. It actually included me in 2009. So yeah, that's kind of like my story in short. But the Glasgow Girls became a film. We actually had there was an opportunity for us to document our story. So there's a documentary that is filmed by the Glasgow Girls, and there's a film made about the Glasgow Girls, and there's a musical about the Glasgow Girls. So there's a few, quite a lot of things. Of the stories just inspired so many people to tell our story really in different ways.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic story, and I remember quite clearly it happening at the time, and it seemed to me just to be the epitome of everything that we want to change. I mean, coming from Glasgow, you already had adopted this kind of gallus, you know, attitude that people in Glasgow have, and challenging authority and speaking out. And it's a fantastic story. And I'd be interested in understanding more how you managed to kind of coordinate so that you alerted people if you suspected there was going to be a dawn raid. How did you actually do that?
I can't take responsibility for all of the campaign because the community was involved, and where, you know, the Scottish people actually alerted everybody, and we had really two strong women in the neighborhood actually did alerting people. And once we were alerted, then we wake up in early in the morning, and basically gather against the Home Office officials and the UK border agencies. And I think for me, when I look back at it, it is inspiring for me because I was very young. I was only 15 years old, and I was so radical, you know. I was like campaigning in early morning, and then after that I'm going to school. So it's a lot of activism, and the community that came together was so strong. The support that we received from the school, from the teachers, and just everybody really really understood like what's going on and how unfair the system is and how cruel children are being treated. And you know, in the musical, actually, one of my favorite songs is Glasgow, You're My Home. And whenever I hear that story, well, the song is just, you know, it brings tears to my eyes. It's just a really strong story. And it's a true story because we grow up in Glasgow, and Glasgow is our home. We might be born in a different country, but we grow up in Glasgow, and Glasgow is our home.
Yeah, I think it's an absolutely fantastic story, and really just so inspirational. And I watched an interview with Cora Bissett about it, who of course did the music and directed it for the musical, and it did show you some sort of snatches of the dancing and the music. And in a previous life, I did a music degree at the Royal Conservatoire in Glasgow, and I was very interested in the different styles that were being adopted. I don't know how true that was in terms of how you celebrate your culture through music and dance in the musical. I mean, was it quite accurate? Because it was obviously quite a mix of lots of different influences of the music.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like you pointed out that, Cora actually spoke with all of us. And in the music, she used all our kind of culture, traditional dancing, and she mixed them all up in that music, and she was amazing. And she also added languages as well, different languages into the music. And I think that's why it became a really great story, and many people have watched it and talk about the musical. My favorite is the musical. And there is a film about me, but I prefer the musical because it really brings it to life when you are in the audience and in that theatre. And it was played in the National Theatre of Scotland. And really, it just like you feel like you're there, like it's happening now. The children are being detained now. You want to save them, and it's you just become like part of the movement. You become the Glasgow Girls. And at the end of the show, it tells you are a Glasgow girl because you've come here to watch this, and also you are welcoming people. So I think it has sent a really strong message, the story.
And I think the use of music, it's something that I've often said to people. I think you know, in the wider Yes movement, as well as the SNP, could do a lot more with music, because there's nothing more stirring than the sound of the human voice in song. And particularly where you've got a big crowd, it absolutely reaches in and grabs you by the heart. And the only time I kind of remember a similar feeling was some of the big marches that I used to go on before the Scottish Parliament was opened originally. And I remember walking up the mound in Edinburgh and just had this massive drum playing, and everyone was kind of like instinctively started to move in time with the drum. And I thought, what you really want here is to create a song that is our song, so that every time we're out, we're congregating and something. And what I saw from the musical, that contains a mix of energy and cultures, but all singing to the same theme. And that's what came across to me when I looked at the musical, how powerful it was. It was both visually and auditorily a celebration of all the different languages and culture and movement. It was just fantastic. So really demonstrating diversity. So then one other thing I wanted to ask you about, I mean, I was so heartened to hear about the support you got from the community in Glasgow. Is that, I mean, I grew up outside Glasgow, and obviously it's got a special affection in my heart. But I would like to hope that Glasgow is as welcoming as I believe it is to people coming from different countries. Is that what your experience has been, or have we still got much further to go?
And my experience of Scotland has been tremendously, people have been welcoming. I've seen the inclusivity of the people of Scotland and Glasgow, especially because I grew up in Glasgow, and the people, the friends I've made in here, the support I have received, the opportunities, no matter where you come from, you know, people being treated with dignity. And I am an experience of that. I've you know, I have experienced the welcoming of Glasgow, and that's why I'm so grateful for the people, and that's why I want to serve the people, because Glasgow is like no other city for me, really, and it would be an amazing if I could serve the people of Glasgow in Parliament.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that. One of my very oldest friends from primary school is a girl who came to Scotland from Sri Lanka. She's a Tamil Christian. There's very few Tamil Christians left now in Sri Lanka, and she came to my school when she was about 10, and I became friends with her then. And it's that old thing that, you know, I can't honestly ever recall noticing that there was anything different about her. I just thought she was a fantastic character. She was a very, very fast runner, faster than me, which and great fun and highly energetic. But I know her at that time found it harder to integrate, and people were not as welcoming to her as I feel they should have been. So if things have got better, I think that's fantastic, and I'm happy to hear what you're describing.
And I'm not saying it's all rainbow, okay? I'm just saying from my experience, people have been nice to me. However, I have faced a lot of racism recently because I have been in kind of the political sphere, and people like now recognizing me. Oh, there is this person exists, you know. I have been for a long time campaigning, but you know, you see people say nasty things to you on Twitter and on social media, and really it hits you, and you're like, oh my God, this person said this to me. Like, no, I'm from Glasgow. What you're saying? You know, like you get that feeling like you get hurt. But I think the best thing is to do is that you ignore it, because really there are a few people that are haters. And of course, today is Anti-Racism Day. I always tell my friends and different communities, just ignore it, and however, take action when is needed. And I think from different communities, I have been very vocal and supporting them. Like just recently, making sure that they register to vote, because I think that's so crucial.
Yeah.
And many people are, they just uneducated about the system and how they can register and to vote. And I think like I've had many sessions with different communities, the Sudani community, and the Kurdish community where I am born, and different African communities and so on. You just like, they appreciate you, that you're reaching out to them, that there is someone that cares for them. They appreciate that someone actually going to do something, and we have many diverse communities living in Glasgow. Glasgow is the most diverse city. So I hope that Scotland has I truly believe that been very welcoming towards refugees and different communities. And I hope,
I mean, that's what I hope as well. And I think you used a word earlier there about dignity. And one of the reasons I feel such dismay at the Home Office, the UK Home Office, is not just because of their policies, but the way they choose to enact their policies appears to me to be seeking to degrade and demean people who have come to our shores looking for a better life in which they can contribute. They look to give to our society. And I just think it is shocking and appalling the way the UK Home Office behaves. And if anything, it appears to be getting worse rather than better. And of course, for me, it's one of the key reasons why, amongst many, why I seek independence for Scotland, because I don't want to say we are a welcoming society and we value diversity. We want to be able to demonstrate it, because actually there's also a very good financial reason as well, that if young people come to our shores, they want to work, they want to contribute to our society, so it's really dismaying the way they behave.
I completely agree with you, Michelle, there. And to be honest with you, the immigration system, if the way it's designed, is to really isolate people and discriminate people. We see people who don't have an accommodation, have no right to work in this country, while they could be paying taxes and contribute to our society. And many people that I speak to, and on daily basis, I work with asylum seekers, they want to work, they want to pay taxes, and it's just they're not allowed to do that under the current immigration system. So I truly believe that dignity and fairness should be at the heart of everything that we do, and I believe through independence we can achieve that. And really, that's why I'm very, very vocal about independence, because I do see that future for Scotland.
No, I mean, and I suppose we will strongly agree in this. It's not just it's what is enabled by independence in terms of a culture and a society you can create that is welcoming. And of course, you make an important point about, which most people don't seem to grasp, when people manage to come to our shores where they've been fleeing some kind of event, in actual fact, often it's the people who are most highly educated and have been relatively affluent in their own country. They've had the means to escape that. And it seems completely ridiculous that you have lawyers and doctors coming here who are not allowed to work and contribute at all, and the associated impact on their mental health.
Exactly. I mean, there is a lot of there's a lot of mentally that people are affected. And you're right, when they come over, like my dad is an example. I'm not gonna go out without a lot of people, but my dad's an example that, he came to this country and he worked in 2002, and then the Labour Party decided to remove the right to work for asylum seekers. They told him that he needs to return his national insurance number so he can no longer work in this country. And that was devastating for him because he felt like he had no purpose in life.
Yeah.
And that's just one example of many. And I mean, he had that work, that he could go to work every day, and you just feel like you have a purpose in life. And if that's taken away from you, you have no dignity, you don't know who you are anymore. So people like living in limbo. Like, I think the pandemic has put a lot of things into perspective. But imagine that you are in the house for a number of years, you have no purpose.
Yeah, and it's very common for men in particular, who often define themselves by what they do in terms of the role of work. And that can often be a challenge for men when they retire, because they can no longer define themselves like that. So this, of course, leads on then to politics and your political ambitions. And as I said in the introduction, #1 on the Glasgow list, that's quite an achievement.
Yes, it's a great achievement, and I'm so grateful to our members that have trusted me and our party for being inclusive and promoting equality. I think we're already making history in our party. There is not enough people, like specifically women of color, in key roles in parliament. And I think improving diversity, this is the first step forwards. I like to show young people from BME backgrounds that they can achieve anything.
Yeah.
And I think that will be inspirational for the future generation.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, we want all our voices to be heard. And I think we've got some way to go yet in diversity. And my former colleague and now business partner, Roger Mullen, MP, would comment that actually we need retired people in the parliament as well. That's one sector of the community said, well, they've got a lot to contribute and their voices aren't heard. And of course, there's a whole breadth of voices that are not yet heard enough. But I mean, obviously, I wish you all the very best. And how are you managing to campaign in this kind of curious time?
It's very difficult, Michelle, and you will know that as well. Mainly, it's kind of on social media, making sure that you're up to date with politics. You tweet and speak to different people, and kind of reach out to other communities. That's what I have tried to do, and we are gonna start leafleting, of course, so we can do that at the moment. So hopefully this week I will be able to leaflet with one friend. I'm allowed to see one other person outside. So yeah, I'm very excited to kind of go out of the house, really. And I think many people are, just to get out of the house and be active. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that this coming week.
Yeah, and if what would you say is your kind of #1 passion, that if you were elected that you'd like to be able to focus on and achieve? Is there something you would single out?
I mean, independent is the core why I joined the SNP. And many people, when I say other things, they're like, oh, why are you not saying about independence? Like, independent is in me. I joined the SNP because I support the independence.
Well enough, so did I. Exactly the reason. Yeah.
Exactly. I think many people have joined the SNP to support independence.
Yeah.
And really, there's a lot of things that I like to do, but I think we have to also take opportunity with the crisis that we are in. We have to turn it into more opportunities, to make sure that we recover from COVID. I think these are really important aspect to go back to kind of normality. I believe in reducing the greenhouse gas emissions and just and green recovery for Scotland. I think that is something that I'm very passionate about, and I want to make sure that we do this properly, and we also empower people during that process.
Mm-hmm. And funnily enough, you've touched on another thing, because today is 3 different days. It's actually, today is the International Day of Forests. I didn't know if you knew that. And of course, the SNP government has a proud track record in terms of their tree planting ambitions. It was 10,000 hectare national tree planting target, but they've exceeded that. And they are seeking to extend that kind of target again, because of course that has a key role in bringing down CO2 emissions. Yeah, so it's
Exactly.
Today is 3 different things, as well as United Nations Anti-Racism Day as well. So sounds like we set that plug up, but I just had to know it's International Forest Day.
I mean, to be honest with you, when you become an MSP, you have to play a role that you have to be more proactive, and you have to make a change for society. I always have done that through all of my roles that I have been in through my life. And I've been vocal about what I am passionate about and what I want to achieve and what are the goals and how to achieve that. And I think many MSPs, when they get into that position, they know what they want to achieve, and I think that's important for us to have that record. And of course, there's many things that we should be campaigning on, but we have a really track record of a great success government that have done have been progressive. And we can talk about my favorite thing is the baby box. So I think it's amazing how every child, regardless of their background or circumstances, can have the best start in life. For me, I think it shows like what is SNP is all about, and a message of fairness and opportunity. For me, fairness, opportunity, equality, diversity is the main core of why I joined the SNP, and I think that's what we stand for.
Yeah, and your comment about the baby box is absolutely right. I mean, I remember when I had my son, who was my first child, how just so poor we were, and at that time you used to get given like occasional vouchers that you could get something extra, and like boots and whatnot. And if I had been given a baby box, and I also think that there's something really special about a physical present coming from the country you're living in, with all the kind of starter effects, and even the lovely poem by Jackie Kay, of course, who's just recently stepped down as the maker to welcome this new life to this world. I think it's fantastic. And I mean, I felt that, the opposition parties ridiculed it, which I felt, I mean, I know their job is to oppose, I understand that, but I thought it was just a very dismal show, them taking a pop at something that can only be celebrated as completely wonderful, a gift for a new start in life. Now, I'm just looking at our chat function in here. We're getting lots and lots of questions in here. First of all, I'll just point out that Rosemary Dixon from Waspy Contingent says, hi, Rosa, Salih.
Oh, thank you. Hello.
And I've got one from David Mitchell here. Fascinating conversation. Great to have you both as SNP candidates. Thank you very much, David. And here we go now. Jim Napier says, I'm very impressed by this young lady. There you go.
Oh, thank you.
I'd like to hear more about what can be done to make Glasgow greener. Of course, bearing in mind it's a dear green place anyway. Have you got any thoughts about Glasgow as a city, how we could make it greener?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of plans. I think what we should be doing, we should be doing recycling properly. I have a lot of ideas, and I think the Scandinavian countries are very progressive in recycling. and more people are more active about it, and we should be learning from them. My cousin actually lives in Sweden and is involved in the green activities there. So I get most of her information from her and how they develop, be more greener in Sweden, in Stockholm. So I have a lot of ideas. I would like to implement them and make that, progressive Glasgow, make Glasgow much greener. And I like to implement them, but as I have to be in that position to try to reform, bring my ideas forward.
Yeah, I mean, and you made an important point earlier. I mean, my kind of experience as an MP was that, and you'll be seeing it just now, I mean, I'm already being lobbied very extensively by a lot of very worthwhile causes that I'm happy to sign up to and to support. But when you're an elected representative, you need to focus on some key areas that you yourself are passionate about, because it's always about going the extra mile and supporting them. And of course, in general terms, all of us in the SNP are there because, one, we're independent supporters, and two, recognise that it's a socially progressive party. But it sounds like climate change is one of the areas that you're definitely going to focus on.
Definitely. I mean, education is my second thing, education for all, environment. And I like to learn more about the Scandinavian countries, because recently Finland became the 4-year running the happiest place to live in, and why that is. And I think we need to learn. I would like to get their ideas, especially on employment. Actually, they have a really great idea on. Basically, they have a workers act, which I think we are a bit restricted in Scotland and how we can do that. However, there are other way of means how we can encourage companies to do more when they do employers contracts. And from kind of Finland, it's very interesting, the kind of culture of trust. And even during the coronavirus, they had no lockdown whatsoever, and they had 800 people have died in Finland. So yeah, the statistics shows that that kind of mutual trust is very, very important. And that through employment rights and employment laws, and how can that be implemented. And so in Scotland also, we've been so great about the modern apprenticeship, so I like to speak that how good we have been. And I think it's important. The modern apprenticeship offers opportunities to enhance Scotland work base, especially for young people.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah. You touched on something there about workers' representation on boards. Ironically enough, when I was an MP, I was quite involved in something which they call kind of corporate governance, and it's a framework how you navigate appropriate behaviours in businesses. And of course, lots of businesses don't behave very well at all. And actually, the inquiry on the BizSelect committee came about as a result of Sir Philip Green's dreadful behaviour towards the workers in BHS. And so then we had a separate inquiry into corporate governance, and we looked extensively at how having worker representation on company boards, giving voice to the workers, was used extensively in other countries, but not in the UK. And we made a number of recommendations about that. But actually, the very interesting word you've used in there is about trust. Trust in mutual recognition of what workers in companies bring. Both the managers and the workers need each other. They rely on each other, and trust within society as well. And I wonder, I mean, I've never heard anyone use the terminology that independence could be a way of re-establishing trust in lots of our institutions and people to country. But it's an important point you make.
Yeah, I think mutual trust is it's key to to many things. And I think we have to have that in Scotland if we want to go forward as a country, that, you know, that country that we want to create. I think we are capable of doing that, and with trust we can go forward.
Yeah, and also when I was growing up, when I was your age, I used to kind of go out with my like friends and stuff, and I always talked about independence. I joined the SNP when I was 16, and at the time when I was your age, to be honest, I was kind of ridiculed by my friends. It was the most ridiculous notion they'd ever heard. And looking back, they hadn't got the sense of trust in themselves that they were perfectly capable of creating the future they wanted. And the idea that Scotland uniquely couldn't manage its own affairs and create a better future for its young people seemed to me to be ridiculous at the time, and is ridiculous to this day. Now I'm looking, we've got a lot of questions coming in that I want to pick up, but what we're going to do first of all, if I can kind of crave everyone's indulgence, I want to just show my crowdfunder video, which lasts for about 2 minutes, and then I want to get back to some of the questions we've got in here from Elizabeth Barnes and David Balfour and so on. But I think if it's okay, we'll just watch my crowdfunding video and you'll see how I've managed to tour around Falkirk East, Roza, during lockdown. So hopefully that's it, starting now.
Okay.
This election is the most important in my lifetime. Scotland stands on the cusp of change. Without change, and without the powers to make the changes we want to see, Scotland will be held back. We've been forcibly removed from the EU against our wishes. The cruel injustices of Westminster have been laid bare during the COVID pandemic. The Tories knowingly and deliberately work against the interests of Scotland, and the Scottish branch office of the Labour Party stands idly by. So this election is about choices, Scotland's choices. We need to choose the people we send to Holyrood, and they need to choose what to do when they get there. We need people who can deliver on Scotland's choices. We need people who can stand up and be counted. And we need people who will focus relentlessly on the North Star of self-determination. I need your help. I need your help to reach as many people as possible in Falkirk East and encourage them to vote SNP. Please support my crowdfunder. This election is different and it's more expensive. We need to use targeted social media, and we need to deliver our leaflets via the Royal Mail. Please help. No amount is too small. Let's make Scotland's future about Scotland's choices. Let's make part of that choice Michelle Thomson, representing the SNP in Falkirk East. Thank you.
So this is how this is how I've been doing it. During my campaign, I've been running a wee series, as well as this and various other things, called Around Falkirk East in 80 Days, that obviously I started about 36 days ago. And we've been using drone footage to get to every area to kind of have a look at it. And some of the drone footage has been done with thanks to a member of Trice Branch called John Riley. Some of it has been so close, people can see their own houses and then it kind of spans out. But I mean, there's some fantastic views. I mean, it's just a beautiful place. Now I'm going to pick up on some of these questions before we carry on our conversation. Right, yes, so David Balfour said, when I visited France several years ago with friends touring on our motorcycles, everywhere we went, we were made to feel very welcome. I remember at the time thinking, I hope that's how people coming to visit or stay in Scotland feel. And I wonder if that's your experience. Now, there's another quite similar one here, which I think we should explore. From Elizabeth Barnes, do you think the Brexit vote has increased the racist feelings that exist in some areas of Scotland? Now, I know we're talking a lot about these kind of themes, but it's obviously of interest to everyone listening. What are your thoughts about those 2 points?
I think Scotland is a welcoming country, as I mentioned, but I think we need to do more. And unfortunately, with Brexit coming, the kind of hatred messages and people saying that you're not from here, go back, and these kind of negative messages, and people who don't have EU, status, sorry, the settlement scheme, then they have to like leave the country. And I think that doesn't send a message of welcoming country in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
And as much as we want to be a welcoming country, we just don't have the powers. And I'm really afraid for so many people, because after June, they're not allowed to stay and they have to go back. They can't even work in this country. So it really is unfortunate to see such a situation created by the United Kingdom. And it's not necessary, because we do feel European. We feel like, we are European. Why you're taking this away from us? And I think it's very backward thinking. We have progressed for many years, and we fought to be like united, and the European countries want us to be with them. And I think it's not a good step, and we have said that from SNP, and we want to be in the European countries. But definitely the question going back to, is racist feeling, racism has increased. Yes, racism has increased because of Brexit. And many people feel that, especially coming from EU countries, but also people with different color of skins. And we all saw that what Nigel Farage did, having boards of, people from different refugees, really, campaigning for Brexit. What is that to do with Brexit? I mean, European countries are not Black. So, and I think it's just, you could see how negative the campaign was from UKIP and the Tories. And unfortunately, we have lost the war.
And picking up your point about education in terms of the loss of the Erasmus scheme, albeit it's been replaced by Turing, which they're trying to dress up as something that is just as good, and of course won't have the same availability, won't have the same support, and that will stop many young people taking advantage of being able to study for a year.
And a Tory MP actually said that. Actually said that, Yeah. So it's not providing opportunities for students to go overseas to study. The Erasmus is not what it is. And, that opportunity has been taken away from students. And I think young people will be very angry. And they will act with voting.
I think so. I mean, my two are, one of them's still a student, and one of them has just graduated into nothingness. He got a job and was made redundant when the UK government failed to announce early enough that they were going to roll forward the furlough scheme. And so he is currently unemployed, having just graduated, and my daughter is a student, and they are so angry at having choices taken away from them. And I know during the time of the Brexit referendum, I made a point, if I met anybody who I could detect were European, you can often identify a Polish accent or French, whatever, I made a point of saying, you are welcome here, we want you here. And I've always done this for years. I mentor young women because I think women need to support women. And one of my mentees, a French girl, extremely talented, extremely well educated, had planned to make her life in Scotland. She loved it so much, but has actually subsequently moved to New Zealand. and has changed her plans as a direct consequence of Brexit. Now, it's actually led us on to something from Elizabeth Joyce Thulis. Do we think young people are interested in politics, and what could the SNP do to engage and include young people? And I think you definitely need to give us your thoughts about that, Roza.
Definitely. I think more people are interested in politics because they feel like, you know, decisions being made by other people for them. And they feel like they have to get involved into politics so they can have a say. And I think we have engaged with many young people, and young people's voices are being heard today, and they're very strong, and they know what's best for their future. And you speak to like the older generation, and I'm sorry to say that, but the older generation are not in touch what is happening, and the young people, they know what's happening and what is best for the future. And I think it's important and that young people get involved in politics. And you know, it's not to do with experience. Many young people actually know more, you know, the older generation, and we have they actually advocating more for independence, because they do see you know, the UK government is no longer, for far too long they have been ruling over Scotland, and we've never voted for them. They make decisions that are not in the best interest of Scotland. I think they understand it. I think the parents, and they understand the history of Scotland, and they've just had enough of it.
Yeah, and I remember when I got very, very involved in politics before the first independence referendum. So if anybody is listening from the Unionists, yes, there will be another one. I'm going to stretch every sinew to make sure that happens. But one of the comments I made was that when my father was a boy, and his father was away fighting in the Second World War, his mother's greatest wish was for a house after the end of the war. And that was a council house, because prior to that they rented rooms in Glasgow. And he remembers his mother as a wee boy throwing a kind of coin in a wishing well, and that was her greatest wish. And that wish did come. They eventually moved into a council house in Glasgow, and that became my father's. He must have been about 11. That was his first permanent home. And after that, he managed to get a job. And because he had a good job, he eventually managed to buy a house, which was what I was born into. And just those very, very simple elements, having stability in the family home, of not always having to move all of the time, being able to get a job that gave him some security, and then to buy a house, and I was born into that. And I'm very, very mindful of that. That's where I've come from. And why on earth shouldn't our young people expect to live in a state, their own state, where they can get a job, where they can get a house? And of course, we all value our NHS. In fact, I did a wee short video about it yesterday because I had my COVID jag. And of course, free education as well. When the rocks melt with the sun, will we get rid of that? But that's so valuable to young people. And you must have seen that yourself, going back to your earlier story.
Yeah, I mean, what is happening in the UK is there's an increase of poverty in children, and more people are using food bank, and we all know what's going on. And we have to really look at what's happening and what we can do to prevent like future generation to not suffer. And really, that, you know, Scotland has shown that we can be a better country, and we can make decisions ourselves. We no longer need to be run by the Tories. And going back to the question saying how to engage with young people, I think SNP has done, we have a Young Scot for Independence,
Yeah.
and many young people are involved and they engage with the group, and I was part of that movement when I was younger. And I think in that way we have engaged with many young people, and young people have a voice through that group. So if you know someone as a young person wants to engage, then they can engage with that group.
Yeah, and I think it's very important that people who are older give that message over as well. I'm very mindful. In fact, Liam McGregor here's made a comment, very true. All I'm doing voting wise is for my kids' future. I'm trying to keep my children engaged with what's going on in politics today. I mean, I know that certainly drives me to, at my stage in life, to use the skills and the knowledge I've gained through my life experience to try and create a better future for people who come after me, because change does take a long time, but that's certainly what drives me. So we've covered so much ground here. Is there any outstanding questions that you want to ask me? So I've been asking you non-stop questions.
Yeah, I mean, my question was basically like, why did you become interested in politics? I understand you said it was independence that pushed you, and you joined many years ago.
I know. Well, I was always one of those kids when I was young that asked why. And quite early on, I was quite young, maybe about 10 again, I detected that people were trying to make me think in a certain way. And there was quite a well-known story about when I was in primary 6 at school, where the teacher had been talking about religion, and she was talking about God, and I had put up my hand and said, how do you know there's a God, and how do you know your God is the right one? Because I've been reading books, and there's lots of societies have lots of different gods. And of course, in those days, they didn't engage and say, oh, that's quite an interesting question for a 10-year-old. I was just taken out the front of the class and hit with a belt, which they used to do in Scottish schools. It was called a tawse, and it was a thick leather belt with kind of strands at the end, and you held your hands out and they hit you with it. And at that time, I remember that was a bit of a turning point for me, because I thought, well, wait a minute, I'm asking what I consider to be legitimate questions. I wasn't challenging, I was just like, but how do you know there's a God? And I tend to do that quite a lot. And I always found it ridiculous, the narrative that people would say, oh no, well, Scotland can't do this. And because I read a lot, my mother went to university when I was in primary 1, and I used to read all her university books when she came home, and I was a bit of a kind of walking egghead about the Plantagenets and stuff like that. She was studying history. And so by the time I got into secondary school, I really was pushing back on the idea that Scotland uniquely couldn't run its own affairs. And I also felt, for me, as a young woman, I was being held back in my aspirations and what I wanted to achieve. My father, he won't mind me saying this, encouraged my brothers, my 2 elder brothers, to go to university, encouraged me to go and get a job as a trainee clerkess. I resisted and auditioned in secret for the Royal Conservatoire. I had to audition in secret. I couldn't tell him, because he would have stopped me auditioning and going to Conservatoire. And he actually made me go for a job interview as a trainee clerkess. And they asked me, because I told them about it, if I got into what was the RSAMD, or if I got the job, what would I choose? And I looked at him and I said, well, I'd be completely mad to do this job if I got the chance to go and do a degree at a conservatoire. And my father was so angry with me. And I think some of it was about pushing back and refusing to accept the role that was being imposed on me, both as a young Scot and as a young woman. I felt I was being pigeonholed to be held back on my aspirations for my life. And of course, that's a neat narrative for where we are in Scotland. We want to be the best we can be. We want to create the best future for our children. That sense of passion about what independence enables, it's not just an end in itself, what it enables still drives me today. So
that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that information.
yeah.
I think my question was last question, I promise. I started asking questions. Do you think like women are today struggle more, or like do you think we have improved, or like have we gone forward in the women's movement? Have we reached equality? Have we how do you find it as a woman in politics? Because I wanted to ask you that question.
Yeah, I mean, I am fearful that the gains that have been made are slipping back. The COVID crisis has shown us that women have disproportionately picked up the slack in terms of running the home. More often they are in jobs and sectors that have been more impacted, such as hospitality. More of them have given up their jobs to keep that stability around their family. I think some of the narrative emanating from Westminster is very poor about how it values women. Some of the adverts they've put out that assumes that you've got this nuclear family and the man is working and the woman's looking after the kids. So I am fearful that things are going backwards. And one other point I would make, which you alluded to, we know that aggression and abuse of women politicians is extraordinarily high. It is female politicians in the UK who are subjected to the most amount of abuse. Diane Abbott is subjected to both misogynistic and racist abuse. Joanna Cherry has been subjected to a great deal of abuse in the SNP as well. I mean, I haven't had too much, and I don't know why that is, and I didn't experience it too much in Westminster, but I don't know whether that's because I come across as the kind of woman that, as they say in Glasgow, if somebody challenges you, you'd say, come here and say that. I don't know whether I came across like that, but I feel that things, if anything, are getting worse, that women are continuing to have to fight to make their voices heard. And we're certainly, in my view, absolutely nowhere near parity. That's for sure. We've still got a long way to go, and we've got systemic issues. I commented on International Women's Day that the whole fabric of our society and our systems, for example, our legal system, which you know about, was created by men. Women didn't have a seat at the table. Our financial systems were created by men. Women didn't have a seat at the table. And I also made the comment that in terms of automation, nowadays we're automating with kind of computer algorithms a lot of this business stuff we might do. Now, if they are fundamentally built on enshrined bias as a way of thought, and then they're created as automatic algorithms, all it's doing is embedding bias into our society. So I think there is a long way to go, in my opinion. Now I'm looking at the clock here because I don't want us to suddenly cut off. If I can, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. Now, next week on the 28th of March, I'll be meeting Neil Gray, who is known to many of you. He's a current MP for Airdrie and Shotts, but he's been selected to stand as a candidate in the equivalent seat in the Scottish Parliament with Alex Neil MSP standing down. So we'll be kind of comparing and contrasting Westminster being in opposition as compared to, fingers crossed, the SNP hopefully being in government. And can I also give a shameless plug for an event being run tomorrow by Momentous Change, myself and my other founding director, Roger Mullen, the former MP. We're hosting a chat with a former MP, Mr. Stephen Gethins, who's written a book called Nation to Nation, and it's described as a vital contribution to the burgeoning debate surrounding Scottish foreign policy within or outside the United Kingdom. in other words, that's recognising exactly as you say, Roza, that Scotland, given its history of what it's exported in terms of intellectual talent to the world, it has a very specific outward looking way of operating in the world, both what it can do today and in the event of being independence. So I suppose the last thing then is to say thank you very, very much for coming on the show. I can see by the number of questions and engagement coming through that everyone's loved having you on the show, and your fresh perspective. Keep that energy and that fighting for justice. We need it. You are the change makers, the young people, and it's been really, really lovely to talk to you and to meet you, having known each other through social media at last. And I hope you enjoy your day with your family.
Thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Lovely. Well, I'll speak to you again. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining me today, and hopefully see you next week at the same time, 3:30 till 4:30. See you then. Bye.